recorded.
John? Jim, are you on the line?
I am.
Good. And Dawn. Dawn, are you here with us? Let's wait 1 minute for Dawn.
Mark, can you hear me? Dave Crawford. I haven't seen you in ages.
Hey.
Hey, Dave.
Now I'll turn myself up again. I've said hi.
Okay.
Oh, so Marla, this is what being a part of an organizer is. I can like mute everyone.
You can.
Yeah.
Cool.
Should we
Power.
text Dawn? What do you think? I'll text Dawn right now.
Mark, if you do well tonight, there's a presidential debate in a couple days, and you can work on that. I just saw Dawn joined, so.
I did.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Dawn, never mind that annoying text you just got from me.
Well, actually, I called up an agenda inadvertently for January 1st, and I thought, why is there no link? And then I realized what I had done, and I thought that's because we were in a normal world back then. So
Right. Right. Okay. Oops, I think you've already hit record. That's great. So everyone gets that little inter bit before, but let's begin it now. Welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board for October 20th, 2020. My name is Matt Cota, Chair of the Development Review Board. With me on the Development Review Board is Alyssa Portman, Don Philibert, Jim Langen, John Wilking, Mark Baer. Brian Sullivan is absent today. Also in attendance from the City of South Burlington is Marla Keene, our Development Review Planner. First item on the agenda is additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items. Does anyone on the board or staff have any changes in the order of agenda items? Hearing none, we'll go straight to the announcements. The announcement I make before every online meeting is thank you to those in attendance, those on the phone, those watching online. Anyone who wishes to participate in the hearing should sign a virtual sign-in sheet in the chat box. Also helps if you can mute yourself. That way we don't hear the background noise or a barking dog in the distance or a phone call. That's helpful. Thank you very much. You should participate. If you do participate, you sign the virtual sign-in sheet. You can do that by putting your name in the chat box. If you're on the phone and you're not on your tablet or your computer, you can sign in as well by sending an email to Marla Keene at mkeene, M-K-E-E-N-E @sburl.com and provide your contact information. It's important to sign in this virtual sign-in sheet because in order to be considered a participant, you need to do so should you want to obtain party status in order to appeal the decision made by this board. And similar to when we meet in person, the public does have an opportunity to comment either on the phone or through this GoToMeeting application using the chat box or the audio video function. And of course, you can also submit comments in writing at any time. Email them to mkeene@sburl.com. Okay, any other announcements from the board or from staff? Hearing none, go to agenda item number 3, which is comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda. If you do have a comment you'd like to address to the Development Review Board not related to any of the agenda items that we have tonight, you can either enter your name into the chat box or just say it, and I'll give you an opportunity to speak. Okay, checking the chat box. I don't see anyone that has a comment not related to the agenda, so we'll jump right into item number 4, which is continued preliminary and final plat application SD 2002 of CEA Properties LLC to construct a 2-story building of 7,200 square feet, each on an existing 3.1 acre lot, currently developed with a 7,200 square foot office building and 1,000 square foot storage building at 10 Mansfield View Lane. I see that Dave Marshall is here with CEA. Dave, do you have anything to say about this project? I'm understanding that it's withdrawn at this time. Is that correct?
Yes, we have made a request to withdraw the application from the board's review.
Okay, so maybe we'll see you on this at another time. Thank you very much. And so on a withdrawal, Marla, if I'm correct, there's no vote or no decision. We just move on to the next agenda item. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep, no reason.
Great.
Withdrawn.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dave. So we move on to agenda item number 5, which is sketch plan application SD 2036 of Lark Inns LP to amend an existing planned unit development on 13.26 acres consisting of a 121-room hotel, an 84-room hotel, a 60-room hotel, a restaurant, and a 3-unit multifamily building. The amendment consists of converting the 84-unit hotel to a 78-unit multifamily building at 1720 Shelburne Road. Who is here for the applicant?
That would be me. I'm Skip McClellan with Krebs and Lansing, representing the Larkins.
Hi, Skip. Is there anyone else here with you?
I think Joe's here, and I think Deb's here. Deb Sherman and Joe Larkin.
Hi, Joe and Deb. Thank you, Skip. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Deb. I just remind everyone that's watching tonight what a sketch plan is. A sketch plan is a high-level review and discussion where the applicant receives feedback from us, the board, on major elements of the project before it is fully designed. During this meeting, the board may provide guidance to the applicant, which constitutes our determination that the application does meet the purpose of the land development regulations. Our comments tonight are really to guide the applicant to a later application that meets the LDR requirements and contributes to the goals of our comprehensive plan. This is not a formal hearing, does not result in a binding decision. The board may choose to continue this meeting on the sketch plan at a later date if there are questions that remain to be examined, and the future date will be announced prior to concluding this meeting. After the conclusion of the sketch plan, an applicant who wishes to move forward with the project will have to submit a complete application. The next level of review includes additional public notices and a formal public hearing. Okay, that's what a sketch plan is. Skip, tell us, as I do before every sketch plan is introduced, I invite the applicant to talk a little bit about what you'd like to do.
Well, you did very well with the project description there. That's pretty much the story. There are hotel units that are currently underused and could be turned into a multifamily residential. Mostly single one bedrooms and studios, and 8 2-bedrooms. And it'll take the addition of right there. It'll take the addition of an elevator inside and some reconfiguration to allow for new bike storage, to allow for some sort of a community room and so forth. The exterior, there's no improvements proposed for the exterior other than a bike rack. There's a smaller bike rack existing today, and when we go do the bike rack calculations, right there, do the bike rack calculations, it'll have to be enlarged, and so we'll improve it and enlarge it. But that is the site work completely. So there won't be much site work, so it won't add to the cost of the units a whole lot, to keep them affordable and so forth. And in the interest of the affordability component of the regs, there'll be 12 units put aside for the inclusionary zoning, I think is the term these days. There would be 6 units in each one of those phases, each one of those wings being a phase. The center, where you see the word comfort suites, is a single-story structure right now, and that's where the elevator is going. So that will be raised. There'll be more floors put on that to allow the elevator to access both of those 2 wings. And other than that, that's the project.
Okay, have you chance, Skip, to look at the staff comments?
Yes, I have. Got them right here in front of me I got 4 screens going right now.
Excellent.
I have a question, Dawn.
Sure, go ahead, Don.
So I should know this having read this, but I just can't recall. Are these going to be rental units or for purchase, like condominium?
Rental. They're going to be rental.
Thank you.
Okay. So Skip, Joe,
Skip.
is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, can I ask for a little more description of the phasing and of the statement that the center portion will be raised?
Well, the phasing will be in two phases, each one of those wings. Okay, the center portion is a lobby that connects the two wings together right now. In order to get an elevator that goes up a couple of floors for each of those wings, obviously the roof will have to be raised. I don't believe the whole structure is going to be raised. I think just enough to allow for the elevator and a room around it, and then access to the two wings. And one wing would be.
When you say raised, do you mean R-A-I-S-E-D, as in the roof will get higher, or raised as in demolished?
Enlarged, made taller.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Joe here. We want to do as minimal demo as possible. So we need to add an elevator that's large enough to handle gurneys and that's sort of the direction of the fire chief. And in order to make that work for both wings, there will have to be some connectivity between the buildings added. But we do not want to demolish, and we will be. It's quite a nice lobby, and we do not want to demolish that.
So
Basically
is
just
there
infill
no
on it.
elevator? Oops, sorry.
Only a
Go
portion
ahead,
of
Don.
the center area will be made taller.
So is there no elevator now for the hotel?
Hi, this is Joe Larkin again. There's currently 2 operating elevators for the hotel. There was a bit of discussion going back and forth, but in order to accommodate a larger format elevator, we need to add a 3rd elevator.
Okay, thank you.
And Joe, if I got this right, it's John Wilkie. If I've got this right, the Western building has the Sunset Ballroom in it. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So actually, in order to make connectivity, you're making connectivity to the Sunset Ballroom and to the upper floor of the Western building as well, right? So you need to raise the whole. I'm looking at a Google shot of this, but it looks to me like you need to raise that whole pitched roof up to pretty much the same heights as the current roofs are now in order to get there, or in some way.
In some way, and when we come back the next time, we will show you. It's been a many iterative design process to get it to a point that we think works. When we submitted this, we weren't quite there, candidly. We believe we've got a solution. We think it looks elegant as can be, but it is adding a chimney elevator to the middle of this building. I will say this is not something that we advocated for. We fought pretty hard to use the current existing elevators, but it was pretty clear that we needed to add a 3rd.
Yeah, that I only know the Sunset elevator, but that's a fairly small elevator. See that?
Do you know how much taller it's going to be?
Go ahead, Don.
So the ballroom is going to remain?
Yes, but we're unsure of how it's going to be used at this point in the game. It's not part of this proposal, let's put it that way. It'll remain, stuck to the building, but it's not part of our proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Is there any other questions before I go into the staff comments?
Yes, Matt. So phasing south first, you said. No, you didn't say.
No, I can handle phasing, Marla. We are, as you look at the screen here on, I think everybody's right-hand side would be the east, the uphill side, if you will, and then the downhill side would be the west. We are looking to do it in blocks, so we would go east first, west second. There really is no logic to that other than that just seems like that's where we've gotten started, and so we're going to work in one wing at a time, and the elevator will. We've ordered an elevator. We want to do that as soon as possible. That's probably the last thing to get completed. With the lead time. So it's phase 1 is east, phase 2 is west, and tying it all together would be the improvements in the middle.
What kind of duration are you thinking? I guess the default that you'd need to get a zoning permit within 1 year of your approval, but you can get a zoning permit, you can get a phased approval. So you could ask for the board to approve 3 phases, so you could actually do 3 zoning permits as opposed to doing all at once if you wanted to. What are you thinking in terms of timeline?
We want to do this as soon as possible. We have an empty hotel, and we think there's demand for apartments. Sort of, I would say that if I wasn't concerned about the elevator being a bottleneck to open this thing, and we think we need the elevator functional to open it all, we would open it all, March. But there might be a chance that we can find a way to phase in, the east wing in, January, February, and get the elevator functional and then work on the west. But I would say that we would love to get this all buttoned up by early next year.
Okay, well, when you come back for your next phase, or your next application, think about if you want to ask for a multi-phase project. It doesn't really add anything. It just gives you the ability to get more than one zoning permit rather than having to do all of your bonding and whatever for all of your impact fees for the whole thing all at once.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, go into the staff comments on page 2. Based on a rough initial calculation using the ITE trip generation, staff estimates the number of trips generated will increase by a small number over existing conditions. Since the project is located in the traffic overlay district, staff considers the board should ask the applicant to provide a calculation of the total number of trips generated by the PUD at the next stage of review and preliminary plat. Staff considers it unlikely that the total number of trips exceeds the allowable, and also unlikely that the increase in trips is significant enough to warrant traffic management improvements. The conversion from a hotel to residential will impact the demand of the property for open space. If this proposal were for a new building, the board would likely require the functional open spaces for enjoyment of the residents, as well as improvements to pedestrian connectivity. With recognition that this is a conversion of an existing building, staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant enhancing the lawn area east of the building with a patio and seating for the use of residents and providing regular mowing of that area. Staff further recommends the board ask the applicant to describe what entrances will be available to residents and to ask them to make more than one entrance available to accommodate pedestrian access and circulation. So Skip or Joe, you want to talk about the what's happening on the outside of the building? What your plans are?
The traffic we'll address with, we'll engage a traffic person, probably Roger Dickinson's name came up, to provide a letter, to provide a quick analysis of the difference between the hotel to the residential, but just the difference. And as far as enhancing the area to the east, which I think is what Marla was requesting, we think that's a great idea. That's a beautiful spot. And we've recently cleaned out a lot of the underbrush in there and left it back to just the bigger trees. So yeah, it'll be a real amenity to the project. It's definitely part of it.
Great. I'd like to see that in the next stage of review.
Okay.
And then the final question was access. We have when it was a hotel, we had functioning access in the lobby space, then at the terminus of the east and west wings, and also exiting the backside of the lobby. And we believe the one on the west and the east and in the lobby, they'll remain. The one on the back of the lobby, we've got to figure that out now. The elevator's coming in, so that's yet to be determined. But there will certainly be a proper amount of entrances and pedestrian entrances.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from the board regarding access and exterior?
Joe, no other amenities, no swimming pool. I don't know. Just
sure. Yeah, so there is a pool in the Holiday Express, which is the building you see to the left of this building, and we'll find a way to see if that makes sense for the residents to use. There'll be fitness. There are multiple rooms in this building that we don't have a real great solution for or an answer for. So we could add more amenity space, and that includes the rooftop. Certainly, that's a beautiful space up there, it won't become units, so we will find something to do with it. We just don't have the answer for that yet. But we're thinking certainly resident amenities is what we're talking through and thinking through.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Staff comment number 2, roadway, sidewalks, and parking dimensional standards. Staff asked the board to provide directions. Staff is asking us to provide them direction on whether they would like them to provide analysis of existing unmodified site features for the next stage of review. This is talking about roadway or parking lot standards, which are not really affected by this application.
Right, Matt, I don't know
the
if that was
board-
here. My question is, do you want us to look at whether it meets the LDRs in the parts of the project that aren't changing, or because they're not changing, do we just let them lie?
You talking about like non-conforming uses, or what are we talking about?
Non-conforming dimensions mostly. And I don't know, but
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know. At a glance, it looks like it's probably fine, but we haven't done that analysis, and I'm asking if we should do that analysis.
What year was this PUD developed? These hotels.
The 2000,
2000.
and then with minor modifications since then.
Right, the piece between the two wings was permitted in 92, I recently noticed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my initial thought is we not add to increase the nonconformity, which I assume we're all on the same page here. But I don't know. John, Mark, Alyssa, Jim, what do you think?
I think it's unlikely that we'll actually make a problem here, but it's fine with me if Marla wants to take a look at it. When you consider how many hotel rooms there were, and you add to that the fact that there was a ballroom, and I've never been there and not been able to get a parking space. I don't think there's a parking problem. And then it's just a question of landscaping and so forth. And it's well landscaped now. So I don't think there's a problem, but I'll leave it to you all.
Yeah, I concur with John on that. I mean, I'm just wondering what Marla would find that we would sort of hold the applicant's feet to the fire and not provide a waiver for when it's been operating for decades functionally, and if we're talking about dimensional standards and parking count. Marla, I think if you're looking for more work to do, go at it. But I'm not sure what you're going to discover that we're not going to be amicable to a waiver or,
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Number 3, which is waste disposal. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant how solid waste is proposed to be handled for the proposed units.
If you look to the left, to the west of the building, you'll see the dumpster area right there. That we'll use that area. And if it requires more stops per week, to get rid of it, then we'll do that. But that'll be the same dumpster that we're using today will be used in the future.
But the individual property owners will be emptying their refuse in that dumpster?
That's right, yes.
Well, that's it for staff comments. Are there any other questions from the board for the applicant?
Yes, this is Jim. I just have a question about with this change of use, likely to be probably more pedestrians just because people are going to be living there, and the closest park is to the east. And just have there been thoughts about sort of the pedestrian connection on, I think it's called Collins Boulevard, to sort of connect with Acre Park or that area?
Well, right now, there's a drive through there. You can see right there, you can see
There
it in
is
the
a, right.
Yeah.
So I guess just to be clear with my question, so there is a driveway there. I don't believe there's a sidewalk, and especially if there's going to be people living there, there might be more cars on that street, and there's not a, I don't believe there's a sidewalk there, and that would be the sort of shortest way to get to the closest park.
Right, so what Jim's saying is the closest park is kind of off to the right-hand side of the page in the Baycrest neighborhood. So you go up Harborview Road and then it's a ways past the page. So what you're asking about is how the safety of people walking out to the Harborview Road sidewalk.
Well, right now, that's a very little used piece of roadway. It could be smoothed out and so forth, but I think there's plenty of room for cars and pedestrians on that, and it's not completely paved, so we couldn't stripe it. But I think it's adequate for both cars and pedestrians.
Is it part of this PUD, that road?
It's not, no.
No, okay.
It's not. Okay.
Is it a public road?
No, it's
Yeah.
actually a driveway.
Yeah, and it has an easement over it to the both parcels. And both parcels are controlled by the Larkins.
Joe, I don't know if you have any interest in doing this, but you've got that ravine to the north. I know that Pizzagalli did some work to get, sort of a walking path along the side of that ravine in order to create a recreational area. And it looks like you've got the ability, certainly with the Eastern Northern Hotel, I don't know what name that's under, to do something into the riverbed there area where you could just have a walking path.
Yeah, I've
Great
kind of
idea.
traced where that, I think that's where that path is. I walked it a couple weeks ago.
Who do we get permits for something like that? I like the idea. I just don't know who approves that.
It's very steep there, From that hotel down to the Bartlett Brook, that's a tributary or could be the main of Bartlett Brook. There's a steep bank right there, so it may not be a great access point to get from this parking lot down to that green area.
Right, so this is the brook, right? Sked?
Yeah, there you go, right through there, exactly. And there's a fairly steep bank between us, the project, and that brook. So if there were a path, it wouldn't probably be all the way down to the brook. It would be maybe along the top or something, but it would be limited.
And that culvert is kind of here-ish, is that right? The big culvert to cross the brook? No, that can't be right. There is a big culvert there.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what it is. Wait. I got this. The brook actually goes like this. And there's a big culvert somewhere in this vicinity to get the path across it. Yeah.
But, so Jim's question and comment was that the park's up to the east. I wonder if we could do a walking path. Can you scroll back down, Marla, so we can see the bottom of the?
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to want to add pavement or concrete to this project at this point. There's a lot of pavement and concrete in this project. I'd like to actually get rid of some over time. But what if we thought about a walking path that came out of the east end of the building and traverse towards the road, sort of tracing Collins or on the, on the land that we own? Or are we thinking the path has to be paved, or what's the standard I guess we're looking for here?
So this is Jim. I wasn't necessarily looking for sort of add an LDR and saying provide this. I'm just thinking of the practical. And so, I mean, to me, it wouldn't need to be paved. It's just, a safe way for people to walk to that sidewalk. And if there's a different route besides Collins Boulevard, safer. That sounds like it could work.
Okay.
I mean, we could,
Thank you for
let's,
that.
I would suggest we explore some walking paths then, Skip, on that land coming out of the east of our building. And I know there's a riverbank we need to avoid and all that, but I think that we could probably, we could explore that and think about a path that goes through there.
Right, where the little hand is there, that's an obvious path through there. The other place is the topography kind of restricts how much you can do in those areas. It really does.
Yeah, you might connect Joe and Skip to the bike and ped committee and hear their thoughts. They might have some good suggestions.
Great.
Okay, is there any other questions from the board or for the applicant of staff before I ask people if they have any public comments? Hearing none, if you would like to make a comment, if you're a member of the public, you can either enter your name into the chat box or just say your name, and I'll call on you. Checking the chat box, not seeing any requests for public comment, not hearing anyone speak up at this time. So that's it. Thank you for this, and we'll next see you at preliminary plat.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
See you. So we now move to agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 6 is a sketch plan application SD 2034 of Eastern Development Corporation for a planned unit development on an existing 8.66 acre lot developed with a single family home and 7,000 square foot storage building. The planned unit development consists of one 6.6 acre lot containing 36 dwelling units and 3 family buildings, a 1.38 acre lot containing the existing single family home and a storage building, and a third lot containing proposed city streets at 600 Spear Street. Who is here for the applicant?
I'm here. My name is Frank von Turkovich.
Hi, Frank.
Hi.
Anyone here with you? Or is
Lucy
it
Fair with
just you tonight?
Lucy Fair with Trudell Consulting Engineers and Abby Derry as well with Trudell Consulting.
Hi, Lucy. Hi, Abby. Similar to what I did the last time around, but for anyone who's just tuned in, I just wanted to do a brief introduction of what a sketch plan is and what it's not. Here in South Burlington, a sketch plan is a high-level review and discussion where the applicant receives feedback from the Development Review Board on major elements of this project before it is fully designed. During this meeting, we may provide oral guidance to the applicant, which constitutes our determination that the application meets the purposes of the South Burlington Land Development Regulations. Our comments are to help guide you, the applicant, to a later application that meets the LDR requirements and contributes to the goals of South Burlington's comprehensive plan. This is not a formal hearing, does not result in a binding decision. The board may choose to continue the meeting at a later date if there are questions that remain to be examined upon conclusion of the sketch plan meeting. The applicant who wishes to move forward with the project will have to submit a complete application, and the next level of review includes additional public notices and a formal public hearing. So with that, Frank or Lucy or Abby, if you'd like to describe this project for us.
Matt, real quick, just so that everybody knows, years ago, Frank and I did a fair amount of business at the National Life together, and I don't think I need to recuse myself, but I bring it up.
Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you,
Matt,
thank you, John.
years ago as well, I did some work from Frank as an architect, but it's been a couple decades, Frank, but I don't think I need to recuse myself either.
No, I don't think so either. More good to see you and good to see you, John.
You too. Yes.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Again, Matt, tonight we have with us as part of our team, Abby Derry, who's the project manager for this from Trudell Consulting Engineers, and Lucy Thayer, her colleague, who's a professional landscape architect. What we're presenting tonight for a sketch plan review is a plan for a parcel of land located on Spear Street at 600 Spear Street. And on the screen in front of us is in the green box there is the land parcel that we're talking about. It's an 8.6 acre parcel with Spear Street on the left going north and south, and then the interstate to the right to the east. And in between two UVM parcels of land that I'm sure most of the people on this call tonight are quite familiar with. It's essentially a private land parcel that's zoned R4 in the middle of the UVM farmland on Spear Street. This parcel currently has a large 2-story colonial house at the south end of the parcel right along Spear Street, and a large-ish 7,000 square foot approximately steel building located behind it. The 2 other homes that you see on Spear Street are both private dwellings owned and occupied by the residents who have been there for quite some time. The building and the house were the homestead and the business space for a Couillard construction company that is winding up now after being in business for many years. Mr. Couillard was in the underground utility construction business, and I think his focus was mostly on underground piping and lighting systems and things of that sort. So today, the land the building is still being used for storage and equipment, but that will all be emptied out once we take over. And there are still some a few pieces of construction equipment on the land, and a small shed that's still located on the property. The other thing for the board to know at this point is that the property was filled we believe it was in the 1980s when most of the fill was done. And the grade was raised in some places by as much as 6, 7, 8 feet and deeper in a few places with material that originated for the most part from buildings and sites on the UVM campus. One of the first things we did and just recently completed was a whole series of environmental investigations into the land, including a recently completed phase 2 study that has shown that there are not any hazardous substances that would prevent the site from being used for housing. There are a few precautions that we'll have to take in areas where there was some fill, and maybe cap some areas and do some things that the consultants will recommend. But for the most part, there wasn't any groundwater contamination. I say for the most part, there was no groundwater contamination. And we even investigated around the house on Spear Street to make sure that the original fuel tanks were removed properly and everything has checked out. There is a wetland located in the southeast corner of the property that will be avoided. It'll be clearly avoided by the housing project that we're proposing. And then later, when we are interested in installing some photovoltaic solar panels for the project, that area will also be avoided. Other than that, the land is buildable. It's flat, and we can work with the contours that we have for drainage, and we're very excited that it's a very buildable site. So our plan is to do residential housing, to do rental housing, and maybe we should go ahead and put up the site plan. Marla, are you controlling that?
I am.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Dawn. So I appreciate the fact that you've looked at environmental contaminants. Are the materials that were put there from UVM, building at UVM, did any of that happen prior to 1978? I'm worried about lead. I'm wondering about lead.
Lead, yeah, I don't know the answer to the question in terms of what years fill may have been brought in. There are some old vestigial farm kind of dump areas that we found. There's some, plows and tractors and things that are sort of stuck in the ground out there. So there are clearly some things that go way back, but it doesn't, to my knowledge, actually, I don't have direct knowledge about that, so I won't try to answer it. But
So you don't know if there's any lead in the soil that's been detected?
No.
Okay.
But the phase 2 study certainly tested for metals, and we can provide more detail about that.
Okay. Thank you.
So our plan, let's go ahead and take a look at the site plan if you folks are ready for that.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Do you want this one or do you want the color one?
The color one, I think, would be good.
You got it. Frank and I got to practice this at city council last night.
We did.
Oh, sorry, I have my screen paused. It's showing on my screen. There you are.
Okay, great. So actually, Lucy, do you want to walk us through the layout? You did such a great job with that last night, and then we'll go from there.
I'd be happy to. So like has been described, we're proposing a series of fourplexes, 8 total in this orientation. So what we've done here is we are proposing a new city street, which is at the south end of the property off of Spear Street. That's to replace the existing driveway. So that would become our access to the site. We are proposing the 50-foot right-of-way with our street that comes in, then the city street. Once you get into the parcel and you're past the existing storage shed, the street then goes north-south. So that's a north-south connection. And you can see we're showing connections to both UVM parcels. If there is an opportunity in the future where those would be developed, there's connectivity built into the project. So as you can tell from this layout, we have sited all of our houses. The development is sited towards the west end of the parcel. So we're really trying to, in this PUD, create a clustered small footprint. We're trying to reduce impervious surface, reduce any sort of sprawl, maintain a contiguous piece of land on the west end of the parcel, and also buffer away from the I-89 corridor. There is an existing tree buffer that is present on our parcel at the east end between the parcel and I-89. That is an effective buffer that will remain. But we did try to site everything as far east as possible for a couple of reasons. Also to avoid any impacts to natural resources. We're avoiding all of the impacts to the any class 2 wetlands that are present. So as you can tell from our sketch plan here, we're really trying to focus on creating a strong streetscape element. The city street comes in east-west and then turns north-south. So the remainder of the circulation is a private way, but we wanted to maintain that strong street presence and street feel, even if it is not an actual part of the city street. So to maintain a contiguous, vibrant streetscape, we have added in a central green area to the project, so that we've been careful to make sure that there is enough public and private outdoor space within the development. So each unit has got its unique outdoor space that's private, either in a patio or a porch. And then we've also created this interior space that's communal. It's not currently articulated because we're still in this preliminary stage, but that would be further developed at the next round. So we have on-street parking. We have tried to do a lot of parallel parking here to maintain that streetscape. And let's see, what else? What am I missing, guys?
No, I think you've laid it out pretty well, Lucy. The thing, I think we can talk more about the buildings as soon as we put up our other slide, but at this point, we can either move into that and explain to the board how we're approaching the building, or we can
Marla, I can see Marla hinting at what I missed, and it is one element I forgot to mention is that in our effort to reduce impervious surface and limit parking to just what's necessary, kind of finding that sweet spot, we really want to connect to the bike path because we have an opportunity where the bike path does run along Spear Street. So what we've done is we've extended the bike path into our parcel to create a safe circulation pattern. And really one thing we're trying to do with this development is because we're about a mile south of the UVM campus. So we have a really great location. We're close it's walkable, it's bikeable, and we're really trying to encourage that sort of use where folks are getting in on their bike, they're using this bike path in and around, and hopefully reducing, car transportation. So.
Thanks, Lucy. Yeah. There's more for us to say about those kind of features, those amenities, bike and pedestrian access being something that we really think makes the project stronger. So we will definitely focus on that whenever the board wants us to, or we can continue with that now.
No, yeah, go into the buildings if you could, Frank. You've got 36 units planned here.
Right, the buildings are all.
That's a great shot.
Okay. We could blow that up a little bit. Okay, so the buildings are fourplexes. Each building has, each half of the building has 2 units in it, one up and one down. Oh, sorry. They are connected by a stairway in the middle, which will be a breezeway kind of stairway. In a few minutes, we can show you another slide that'll highlight that aspect of it. But the idea was to keep the buildings small. In other words, present enough light coming through the buildings, in between the buildings, so that somebody walking down the sidewalk would be able to look into the backyards and really have a feeling that there is some open space in the project. But again, 4-unit buildings, 8 buildings on the plan, so that brings us to 32 units. The existing colonial house that's on Spear Street would be divided into probably 2 units. That would make the most sense. It's a big house and probably isn't going to work really well for a family situation, so we're thinking about dividing that into 2 rental units, possibly 3. And if that happens, then it brings us up to the 35 units that were allowed under current density. There is a reference in our materials to 36 units, but the total unit count, frankly, has been a bit of a moving target, and we will try to nail that down when we come back to the board with more detail. So that is. And
Frank, you're keeping the steel building, I see.
Yes, the steel building is something we really should spend some time talking about. It is a typical steel building. I'm not sure I can't remember the brand right now, but it is actually in really good condition, as you might imagine. It's what makes it so good is that it's got a really heavy duty foundation that the Couillards built for it. So there's a thick slab inside the building. It was used for all of their equipment. We looked at it and realized that to demolish the building, which was something we were thinking about initially, would cost a lot of money and really seemed to be kind of wasteful, because we have some ideas for how to repurpose the building. And one of the uses that
basketball court?
Well, it's not, I don't know if it's tall enough for that. It might be, but one idea is to use a chunk of it, probably 1,500 square feet or so, as storage space for the units. So it would be heated storage available to the tenants. Everybody needs storage, and to try to keep some of the things out of people's apartments that normally end up in there because there isn't convenient storage would be a great solution. We also envision a shop space inside the building where tenants could use the shop to work on equipment, gear, bicycles, and that would be available on a year-round basis. The rest of the space in the building, some of it would be ours to use for maintenance and other needs that we have for the project. And then there's room left over inside there that we'd like to talk to the board about, that maybe look at an idea to have some maker space or some office space that would be available for people who are working at home. And this day of living through the pandemic, where a lot of people are working out of their living rooms, having a place to go to where they might be able to work within walking distance of their house, or maybe the company or the person that the company that they work for would be willing to rent some space for them. These are all things that we could contemplate doing inside that building. Refitting it with a new HVAC system, making it pretty interesting space, possibly. And that's an idea that we're talking to the planning staff about.
So no changes right now to the exterior of the building?
Well, we're not showing anything, but clearly there would have to be. We would have to add windows. We are planning to look at the feasibility of doing solar on the roof. If the ridge runs north and south, so we could certainly do solar facing west, but it's a fairly flat pitch on the roof, so we could probably do east and west solar and make that work. So yeah, we would plan on making a pretty substantial investment in the building to make it functional and useful.
And I believe, this is Dawn here, I believe it's now orange or yellow on the outside.
Yes, it is.
Not an appealing color. I would hope that there would be an attempt to provide a more muted exterior.
Absolutely. Yep. And none of the site has any paving on it now, so the paving that you see on this plan would be in front of the building. So here's a street view, giving you some more feeling for how this would feel from the neighborhood context. And if you can look inside that space between the two buildings, you can see the stairs that right there. Yeah.
Oops.
Oops.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, gosh.
It's probably not going to show up very well, but you can kind of see the angle of the stairs coming up to the second floor. So that one set of stairs goes up to a platform, and right and left accessed into the two second floor apartments. The next slide will give us a look at the back of the building. Yeah, and on this slide, and again, this architecture is really early, and there are a lot of things that we would probably want to express differently, but you can see the idea that each second floor unit will have a covered porch, and underneath that porch is a ground floor patio for the downstairs units. And those would all face into these backyard green areas that would, once they're landscaped, would give people some privacy and some autonomy to do things around their own apartment. And then if there's more of a group thing that's happening, the commons area or the green space that we talked about earlier would be used for that.
Occupied third floor, Frank?
No, it's our designer has shown a window up there. Probably we're trying to keep the scale of this close to what you see on that big colonial house that's on Spear Street, so that we're not doing something that's radically different. And the board should probably know that we did look at a lot of different ideas, and we've looked at flat roof, 3-story modern buildings and things, and some of those thoughts, they were interesting, but I think sticking to something that's more traditional, that kind of plays off the agricultural uses that are going on at the UVM farm, the steel building that would remain, and this all would start to maybe pull in some of those agricultural ideas. And you don't see a lot of that on these drawings yet, but we are thinking of some design elements that might pull some of that together.
I think it looks fantastic, Frank, and this is a high level of detail for sketch plan.
Thank you.
So.
Well, we wanted the board to see the idea, I mean, the concept at least, and as it's expressed here, and if you like what you see, then we'd like to continue to work on this and try to get something more detailed in front of you as soon as we can.
Frank,
Do you want to step through staff comments?
can I just ask about parcel B? Because I know that won't come up in the staff comments. What happens to the east of the property?
Well, John, to the east, you can see there's a berm that this design has placed on the site, and we probably will want to build some type of berm that we can put some new vegetation on, some new trees to help give those trees a boost and a start. There is concern on our part about noise from the highway, but so on days when the winds are prevailing, which they normally do out of the west, it's not that bad. I mean, even where I live on Swift Street, I can hear the noise from the interstate, and I'm pretty far away when the wind's blowing in the right direction. But for the most part, I don't think noise will be a big issue, but we're going to do everything we can to try to buffer against that. We're pretty sure we can get a good visual buffer on a year-round basis so that people will be able to see the fields around the project, but they're not going to see the cars moving by that, continuously on the interstate. As far as the rest of the land is concerned, though, the thought was to keep the project tight to the west as possible. And then to the east of this area is where we would, in the future, propose to install some solar, because as we talked to the city council about last night, we think we can make this almost fully net zero and go all electric with this project. We're planning to do air-to-air heat pumps, on-demand hot water heaters near the fixtures. Our goal is to make it completely self-sufficient in that sense, energy-wise.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments before I step through the staff notes? Some of this we've already discussed, but for the purposes of making sure we cover everything. The first comment, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, I know that the staff comments, we're going to go through them, predominantly seem to focus mainly on like circulation and parking and streets and stuff like that. I do just want to, again, concur like with John and what you've said, Matt, is I like this layout. I normally don't really like the sort of traditional grid layout, but I think that it really works here. It's small enough, but big enough that it sort of creates its own little neighborhood set back from the street. I think that, the one area where you have the common green space, where you have the 3 buildings, really does create like a common area. And I like the connection out to the bike path. So, I see that the architecture is still early, but I do like that you didn't go with the flat top modern, siding buildings. This sort of has that sort of Vermont farmhouse vernacular look to it. And I think as it gets developed further, it's just going to improve it. So I like this project.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you. We do too. We really feel like after looking at a lot of different ideas, this one really seemed really strong to us. And I have to credit Lucy and Abby with this. I'd like to take all the credit myself, but I can't. Yeah.
No, it's a good little compact project.
Okay, staff comment number 1, the maximum lot coverage is 40%, which the applicant is proposing to very slightly exceed on the front lot, parcel A, with lot coverage of 40.3%. As a PUD, the board has authority to waive overall lot coverage on a lot-by-lot basis, as long as the overall zoning district coverage is not exceeded. Staff supports this waiver, recommends the board discuss whether they would approve a slightly higher waiver, say 45%, in order to facilitate minor modification without the board review in the future. Is that something, Lucy or Frank, you think you need or asking for?
I think that we would be amenable to the request of that, so that there is a little bit of flexibility.
So the total lot coverage.
The other thing I would add.
Go ahead, Frank.
Okay, I was also going to add that we're working closely, and Marla can tell you this, that we're working closely with staff on this. We wanted to, as you know, we did go to the city council last night and asked for permission to proceed with this out of interim zoning. And the council is going to, we think, make a decision on that on November 2nd. The council seemed, if I can offer this, interested in that possibility. But it's because we're working closely with staff to make sure that the PUD concepts that you see here meet the current regulations, but also regulations that might come out of the interim zoning changes. So to have a little bit of flexibility on those kinds of issues or those kinds of parameters would be helpful.
Oh, this is part of the southeast quadrant, so we're under interim zoning here.
We are.
So it's part of the transit overlay, which is what interim zoning covers.
I see. Because it's, yeah, okay, right.
Or,
Not the
sorry,
applicant's transit
opposite,
overlay.
not part of transit overlay. So it's under interim zoning.
And city council hasn't ruled on this yet.
Not yet, but last night's meeting was, I thought, productive and very positive.
And what, Frank, what you alluded to, what was the part of this that would comply with the changes to interim zoning?
Well, I think the concept, one of the things that's going to come through for all of us out of interim zoning when it comes to PUDs is the typology and sort of conformance with some of these design ideas that the city is going to want to see expressed in future PUDs. And Marla may be able to speak to this more accurately than I can. Certainly Paul, when he's available, will. But we think that the project really does address today's PUD concepts and the ones that we anticipate the city adopting in the future. So we're pretty sure we're going to be in good shape, even as a future project.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about it. Obviously, Paul is much closer to this, but the future PUDs will, as Frank mentioned, require certain typologies, which refers to building types that are allowed in each area. Fourplexes will be allowed in the R4 district. It's very likely to require buildings to face on streets, with an emphasis on compact development centered around a common space or central feature. Other things are to include a mix of uses. So those are really things that this application has hit on.
But the changes to the PUD requirements and the land development regulations are not tied to the lifting of interim zoning, correct?
No, we're asking for permission to proceed.
No,
I'm
sorry to interrupt, Frank. That was more of a question to Marla. That we can have changes presented to the PUDs without interim zoning is going to last another year, but the PUD changes could happen sooner than that. Is that correct, Marla?
The PUD's changes are one of the purposes, one of the goals of interim zoning. So once that's gotten taken care of, then the city council is more likely to lift interim zoning.
Right, but there are other things in interim zoning purposes. Well, we don't need to go into it. Okay, thank you. I'm clear in my mind. Next item, number 2, road width. At this time, the north-south roadways are proposed to have a 24-foot drive width with an 8-foot parallel parking in some locations, and the east-west private roadways are proposed to have 20 to 22-foot drive width. Standard neighborhood street width is 26 feet, including parking on one side, though in the case of the 26-foot width, parallel parking is generally informal. While staff is generally supportive of the more formalized north-south roadways with parallel parking on one side defined by bump outs, staff considers that a standard drive width of 20 feet is more likely to result in neighborhood feel and reduce potential future cut-through traffic. Recommends the board direct the applicant to reduce the drive width to 20 feet, retain the 8-foot parking. The stated goal of the developer, strong bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, which staff considers more supported by a narrower width. So Lucy or Frank, what say you regarding 20 feet versus 24 feet?
We're okay with that. We actually like the idea of minimizing the travel lane widths. So sure.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have a comment regarding 24 versus 20?
No, I'm always a fan of reducing pavement width.
Yeah, I think as long as the parking, the nose-in parking still works, I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay, number 3, staff considers in order to create a right-of-way with either no jog, staff considers in order to create a right-of-way with either no jog or less of a jog, the board should require the applicant to shift the right-of-way slightly south, but no more than 40 feet on the subject property. This would have solved the front setback issue on the existing home to remain. The consequence would be that the parcel to the south would be required to provide additional right-of-way at such time as developed, which could potentially be used for street trees and a sidewalk or parking as appropriate. Marla, maybe you could, I'm a little confused on what we're talking about here.
Sure.
Can you show us the right-of-way or highlight it?
Right, so the proposed right-of-way is here and the property line. As it's shown today, that results in a 5-foot front setback for the existing building. The board's authority to waive front setbacks is only to 10 feet. You can't actually waive it down to 5. So that proposed right-of-way doesn't really work for that reason. And then I guess the rest of the comment is, I'm gonna have to pause my screen and go back to the comment because I've forgotten the rest of it. I guess if for whatever reason in the future, the whole roadway becomes public, then the right-of-way, I'm gonna do this a little bit differently. The extension of the right-of-way couldn't be just straight because it would then go through the homes. And I apologize, I have a funny line type on right now. It's coming out as a double line. So it would go right through the homes. If, in order to have a functional right-of-way this way in the future, if for whatever reason this became a public road, then there would be sort of a jog in the right-of-way here where it goes from, up high to a little bit. So there's really no need for the entire right-of-way to be on this parcel. It could be if it didn't present these other problems, but one potential solution would be to provide, a 40-foot right-of-way or whatever is necessary on this parcel, and then at such time as UVM wishes to develop, they would be obligated to provide, the remaining 10 feet up to a normal right-of-way.
Right. Got it. I see what you're getting at. Frank or Lucy, do you have a comment about that suggestion?
We don't have I don't know that we have any particular issue with it. We haven't had a chance to think it through thoroughly. We are in conversations with the university, and I don't think that they'll be ready to commit to a future plan for this, but we'll certainly bring it up.
I do have a question for Marla, maybe, or the board. Can we propose a 40-foot right of way along this location rather than a 50-foot right now? And then, in the future, should we be able to work with UVM and get more right of way on the south side, increase it to 50 feet?
Yeah, it's been done before. Obviously, this would be a question for the board, but let me reframe it a little bit in more of the context of the board is used to hearing it. If you were to propose to dedicate 40 of 50 feet at this time, then the board's decision would have to say at such time as the southern parcel is developed, the additional 10 feet would need to be provided. But that's fairly normal where a proposed right-of-way is split between the applicant and the adjoining landowner. It sort of becomes the cost of doing business for the adjoining landowner to have responsibility for some of the access to their own parcel.
Marla, it's John. I mean, the jog where it occurs also occurs at a private road. So does it really matter? I mean,
I guess we're sort of thinking that this private road may decide it wants to become public at such time as there's connectivity.
But at such time, the university or whoever their developer is would be coming back to somebody to get that ability to do that. So, you know, at that time, there's not, I mean, they're developing all of this at the moment. So I don't see the problem.
One question I have is, I see on the, you can see it underneath the line of street trees running east-west on the southern portion of that new city street. And it says new maintenance easement. Is that UVM granting you that easement to put in those street trees?
We have, Mark, we've talked to UVM about that. We've shown them this plan, and we believe that that is going to be acceptable to them, that we can install street trees and maintain that landscaping there.
Okay.
So that we're looking specifically for the permission to do that from them.
Yeah.
And now that we're talking about these staff comments, we will have a conversation with UVM about this. So if this can all be resolved before we have to put our project forward, we will. But I think that the idea of dealing with it on a joint landowner basis and splitting it sounds like a fair way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get it cleared up during this project approval, so much cleaner. But
Yeah.
as a board member, I'm fine with putting a condition that in the future, if in the future UVM develops it, they have to take on the rest of the right of way.
Right. And that land that's farther to the east that we talked about a few minutes ago when John asked, it is possible that that would become more intensely developed in the future, but I think that how that would be used is really something that we certainly aren't thinking about right now, and don't see it as being a likely thing with the traffic is in the proximity to the interstate. And probably the city would want people to leave a big buffer there in the future, I would think.
Yeah, we have a 200-foot interstate buffer, 150-foot interstate buffer. Either way, you're well out of it. There is still the issue of the front setback on this building that can't be less than 10 feet. So all other things aside, the front setback can't be made in a non-conforming way. This would need to come in at least 5 feet. So it's 10 feet away rather than 5.
So Marla, if we could, we'll regroup on this after tonight's meeting and talk about the idea of a two-part setback, a two-part right-of-way concept, keeping all of our improvements built on a valid right-of-way today. But if it's going to be more developed in the future, the other landowner would have to contribute some additional right-of-way.
Hey, Frank, I think you gained it in the street. You went from a 26-foot street to a 20-foot street, I think, on the private lane that's in between house number 1 and house number 2. And you probably have gained enough land to be able to make it work.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Abby, are you looking at this?
Good.
Yeah.
Good catch, John. Item number 4, road layout impacts to setbacks. The applicant is proposing distributed parking in lieu of one central parking area, a proposal which staff supports. Headed parking is not allowed on the street. Staff therefore recommends the board discuss with the applicant strategies for making the northern east-west connection have the appearance and function of a driveway leading to a parking areas rather than a road, potentially to include narrow entries, bicycle parking, or benches in sight distance appropriate landscaped areas. So the northern east-west connection have the appearance and function of a driveway. Can you highlight the specific area you're talking about? Okay. I don't have any ideas. Does anyone have any ideas for strategies?
Boy, I think
Maybe
they did
Lucy
it. I think,
or Frank?
I think they did it pretty well, honestly.
So I would say that's definitely a goal that we're trying to communicate, is that it is what Marla's asking or what staff is requesting here. And if there are additional elements we could include, benches or other strategies, we are certainly open to that.
We look forward
Okay.
to more discussion with staff about that point.
Okay, great. Thank you, Frank. Let's see. Okay, item number 5, if the board generally supports the idea of this connection, talking about the connection to the existing north-south recreation path on Spear Street. If the board supports this connection, staff considers the applicant should prepare a detailed proposal how to improve the safety of this crossing, taking into consideration the city's proposed improvements and the timeline thereof along this corridor. Yes, I would support the connection. What are the improvements? Maybe Marla, you could tell me the city's improvements to this bike path.
Well,
you
this is a
referred to.
35-mile-an-hour roadway, but I think that people tend to drive a little bit faster than that because it is pretty far to the next control. It's, you know, either way far north or on the other side of the interstate. So the concern is that you're screaming along in a car and then all of a sudden someone's crossing on bike or on foot here. So, you know, perhaps someone who's a little better at this kind of stuff could say whether one of those beacons would be adequate, or maybe, you know, some signs back farther up that say pet crossing ahead or what have you, to make sure that this is a safe pedestrian crossing.
The one next to my house here on Dorset Street, we're at 40 miles an hour, and I can assure you people go faster than that. And it's very effective, the lit flashing signals. So signalizing it seems to work fairly effectively. People do pay attention to it and do stop.
Great.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we would definitely look at in the next step of the project. Are there proposed improvements at this time along Spear Street in this corridor for traffic calming or speed calming?
There are a couple improvements proposed at the far ends, but not in the center.
Okay.
And we can show you those. Make myself a note.
When you say far end, Marla, are you talking about closer to UVM or further away?
Both, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, I would looking at it on Google Maps and seeing how you're gonna cross there, and I understand Marla's comment much better now. Now that I see where the South Burlington rec path is, and yes, I'm very familiar with the lights near John's house on Dorset Street, and I think that would be a great idea of how to do that in terms of slow down traffic for people crossing, walking, or biking. I think it works. At least I think it works. I'm not sure if anyone has a better idea.
There is a swale on the far side of it that you've got to cross, right?
There is, yeah. We would envision filling that in, filling a pathway across that swale.
Yep.
It's more of a slope, John, that kind of goes from down to the path. So
yeah. In the old days when I actually could run, I used to know about that. But anyway, good.
Okay. Item number 6, regarding the storage building. Now, we did talk about this, Frank. But staff recommends the board invite the applicant to describe their conceptual uses for the building, discuss with the applicant how it might be integrated into their development using visual cues such as pathways and landscaping. I think you heard from Dawn that a different color would be nice. I certainly heard from you, Frank, that you have a variety of different proposals for the inside. That all makes sense to me. Does the board have any other comments about what what use should have, whether the building should stay, what do you think of the proposed uses for it?
Frank, it's John again. This is such an opportunity. I know you see it, but a small industrial building has so many possible uses. I assume you'll core some windows in it, maybe even do a mural on the outside of it. It's got great opportunity, and I think you should take it. If you don't want to take advantage of it, sell it to me, and I'll take advantage of it.
No, John, we totally see that, and we really like the idea, and we haven't had a chance to do anything yet with any detail, but we will come back to the board with some good ideas for that. We're excited about it.
Okay, does any other board member have comment about possible uses, potential uses for the existing building?
I guess that the stuff
In regard to the,
was really about getting to the building.
yeah, that's actually, I was just gonna jump in on that, Marla. So we're still in a really preliminary stage of the design, but once we do figure out more of the interior use and where those connections need to be, we'll definitely provide those. In terms of visual compatibility, it'll have the same treatment as the rest of the project. So visually, it will be compatible, similar, and we will be sure to provide the adequate and appropriate access to that facility.
Great, thank you, Lucy. Item number 7 regarding open space. The applicant.
One quick thing, Matt.
Go ahead.
Frank, Abby, when you're talking to UVM, you might want to talk to them about opportunities as well. They have their engineering group, their athletic group. There's all sorts of opportunities for that building that may tie to UVM, be very positive for you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, open space, number 7. The applicant is proposing an interior commons area for which no design has yet been proposed. Staff considers that in order to avoid this area being perceived as an extension of adjacent backyards, that some delineation is necessary. Staff recommends the board discuss the design of this area with the applicant. Marla, can you highlight this commons area you're referring to?
It's the dark green square that kind of forms that interior quad between 2, 3, and 5.
Right. And you could delineate it with landscaping.
There's a lot of There's a lot of different ways we could delineate it, either with landscape elements. There could be maybe we want to use a similar vernacular, so maybe it's a split rail fence, maybe it's large boulders, maybe it's shrubs and trees and plants. It could be soft or hard. We haven't gotten into that level of detail, but point taken, and we will certainly take that into consideration and incorporate it into the next round.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Lucy. Okay, that is, number 8, parking. Staff recommends the board discuss these parking spaces with the applicant and consider whether they consider them acceptable. As noted above, staff considers both north-south roadways have the potential to become public streets, and head-in parking is generally not allowed on these streets. Staff notes that the diagonal parking may be allowed on public streets. Parking is prohibited between the buildings and streets for the purpose of the parking locations being activated street presence. The applicant has proposed 7 head-in parking spaces along the road adjacent to the community common area. The LDR does provide an exception for parking in the front of the case of public recreation uses. The board should discuss whether this common area could be considered as public recreation. Now, okay, that's to the right of the common space, right, Marla?
Right.
Parking is prohibited between buildings and streets for the purpose of parking locations being activated streets. So this is if this road becomes a public road. As a private road, those parking spaces would be allowed under the LDRs, but if it became public, they would not. Is that correct?
So the LDRs actually don't speak to head-in parking on streets. It's just that the city would never accept a street with head-in parking.
Oh, I see. So the question is, I mean, if they wanted to, the city to take over the street, they would have to change the parking configuration and then subsequently
Right, but I
apply
think if this
for
road
that.
were to connect to the north and south, the city would want to take it over. Because it would then
Right.
be full landowners and we wouldn't want a private street. Yeah, well, you could.
So either fix it now to prepare it for it to be a public street, or accept that you'll have to change your configuration in order for it to become a public street.
So one potential idea is that public streets can accept diagonal parking. I know that does kind of make it a little screwy for you guys because then you only can get at it from one direction. But that's one potential, and we genuinely wanted the board's feedback on this because I think it's a bit of a sticky wicket.
I think it's a non-issue. These are private streets, and if the city wants it to become public at some point in the future, the city has the ability to negotiate for the public street.
What is Frank? What do you say about this dilemma?
I guess I'll say a few things, please. One is that we really like the way the parking is working inside the project as shown. It gets enough parking close enough to the apartment doors that we believe are going to be necessary for people that just have to have it to be conveniently accessible. So to the extent possible, everything you see on the private side of the project, we think the layout works well, and it still pays, it still respects some of these design features that we talked about earlier in terms of the streetscape and the typology. Even though these streets do have some head-end parking on them, or I call them streets, these driveways have head-end parking on them, it still feels like more of a neighborhood street arrangement. In the future, the dedicated city street that's already designed to run north and south, we think that those two intersections would give adjoining landowners plenty of access to our entrance road and the road going north and south. There should be more than sufficient future access. If things change and the city envisions this property to the east of this being developed closer to the interstate and a city street is required, probably the one that's furthest south that runs east and west would be the way to get there.
But
I
even
think
if
additionally,
Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say additionally to point out if diagonal parking is permitted, a simple change in striping could change this from, I don't know if there's a lot of dimensional change. So I think that this is not prohibitive of a city street coming there in the future.
That would be my response, which is, I think the parking works here as a private street. If it becomes a public street, you're gonna have to change your striping, but I don't think that the design would have to be changed, other than you might lose a couple spots and you'd have to drive around in order to get there. But
Good point.
I don't know. That doesn't bother me. Anybody else on the board have a comment?
No, I'm fine with
Regarding-
that.
No, I'm fine with it as is.
Okay, and that's it for staff comments. Are there any other questions that the applicant has for the board or for staff?
I think we're good. We really like the fact that you like it, and it's great.
Any comments from the public regarding this project? If so, say your name or enter your name into the chat box. Checking the chat box. Not hearing anyone. So that's it. We'll next see you at preliminary plat. Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 7, continued and preliminary plat application SD 2016 of O'Brien Farm Road LLC for the next phase of a previously approved master plan for up to 458 dwelling units and up to 45,000 square feet of office space. The phase consists of 6 multifamily residential units with a total of 342 dwelling units, of which 48 are proposed inclusionary units, and an additional offset of 48 market rate units for a total of 390 dwelling units and an underground parking and 35 square feet of commercial office space at 255 Kennedy Drive. Who is here for the applicant? Hey, Evan. Evan and Andrew. Thank you. Now, I did read that, but I might have memorized it because this is the 5th time you folks have been before us for a preliminary plat. I think we saw you at least twice at sketch plan for this project. And we are still at preliminary plat. So I will remind anyone watching that preliminary and final preliminary plat, within the last 6 months, the board reviewed a sketch plan and provided oral guidance to the applicant. This is the first formal stage of review. In this hearing, the applicant will describe the project, and the applicant and the board will step through the staff comments and thereby considering the proposal's conformance with the applicable land development standards. Next, the chair will invite public comments and questions. The board may choose to continue this meeting at a later date. If there are any questions to be remain examined, the future date will be announced prior to concluding this item for the evening. At the end of the stage, the board will vote on whether to close the hearing, and once closed, we'll issue a decision on the application. But this is the next stage would be the final plat application, which would include all the final project details. This is just preliminary plat for those that are watching at home. Okay, so we are getting to the end of this project. Getting to the end of the preliminary plat review. And we have about 6 staff comments in the project packet. Is anything you want to say, Evan or Andrew, before I go through this?
Just that we appreciate everybody's patience. It's a big project, and we know there's a lot of materials that staff has sorted through, and we just appreciate everybody's perseverance on getting to this point.
Okay, great, thank you. So number 1, as noted on 915, the applicant has provided staff considers an acceptable level of detail for preliminary plat. However, this detail is somewhat less than the board is accustomed to seeing at preliminary plat. I'll read the comment here. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant that the decision will find a number of criteria, a decision which has not been rendered, of course, but the decision on preliminary plat will find a number of criteria preliminary met and will provide some guidance, but not necessarily specific instructions on how to achieve the final plat compliance with those criteria. Staff has discussed this concept with the applicant and anticipates they'll find it acceptable, but feels it's important to state explicitly in order to prevent misunderstanding at the final plat. I read this as saying, yeah, you have final plat, you have preliminary plat and final plat, and in some cases we'll defer decisions to final plat, or the applicant will defer final decisions, and that's fine. There's other times where we see preliminary plat where all of it's fleshed out, and final plat moves fairly quickly. But of course, this is a significant large project, so I imagine we'll be doing that as well. But I understand why you want to leave things to final plat. Any comments about that understanding, Evan?
Yeah, I think that we certainly understand and agree with the fact that we're not going to work out every last minute detail of preliminary plat. And I probably sound like a little bit of a broken record, but there are a few big ticket items that we think that we have provided adequate information and materials on that the board can weigh in on and provide a little bit more certainty as we move forward, because the step from preliminary to final, there's a pretty significant investment, and some of these, the whole viability of the project relies on. The one that goes way back to 5 years ago when we were first in the sketch plan hearings for this is really the height, which everything is basically contingent upon receiving. And we think that, we provided quite a bit of architectural detail at this point, certainly not a final plat level of architectural detail, but we believe we've provided architecture that's consistent with what we've committed to all along the way. And we think that justifies the increased height. The other one would be the setbacks, the building setbacks, which really, constitutes kind of the finality of the layout of the roads and sidewalks, pedestrian thoroughfares, et cetera, and how the buildings relate to them. And then the third one would be the location of the inclusionary housing component, which we've talked at length about over a couple of different meetings now, and consolidating those those units into one building with a couple market rate units as well. So I don't know, Andrew, did you have any other points that you just want to bring up kind of preliminary right now?
Well, we had submitted a letter earlier today, just it was a brief letter in response to the comments, but the 3 Evan listed were in the letter, as well as just the general road width and building locations. I think just sort of the kind of the same as setbacks. But, you know, obviously if the road widths were changing dramatically, or the buildings, you know, needed to be reoriented in some way, that would also be important to solidify at this point.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Evan. Any comments from the board? Staff comment number 2, the applicant is proposing a small common space, roughly the size of 1.5 parking spaces on the buildings. Decorative screening of the garage openings, and has provided schematic illustrations of street side landscape architecture. The staff comment is the staff recommends the board revisit these concepts and determine if the applicant has conceptually proposed enough improvements to overcome the concerns expressed by the board on 519. Board, this is our invitation to revisit these improvements. Is there something that we can look at, Marla?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pull up a plan from their PowerPoint presentation, because I think that really covered it. And the reason I wrote the staff comment the way I did is because there is no one plan that really shows these things. So here's one that I have on my screen. So let me just hit play here. So this was particular to, I think, building 10, but this general idea of there's trees and maybe some seating and maybe some decorative inserts and some vegetation, and then there's a door in the middle. Because we don't have real plans for this, we just have these sort of schematic drawings. I wanted to make sure that this is sort of representative of what the board's expectation is, and we can put that into sort of a general form and say, as long as you follow through on this proposal at final plat, you're good to go.
Yeah. Mark, does that sound right to you?
Yeah. No, I think that certainly there's plenty of design intent and content to be able to implement it in a final review.
Mark's good with it. I'm good with it. Anyone else?
I'm good with it.
I'm fine.
Okay, comment number 3, west of the planned entry to Two Brothers Drive, Kennedy Drive is principally characterized by mature wooded areas and more visible 2-story multi-family buildings. The proposed 4-story building, 3 residential floors above a garage, is supposed to be placed 60 feet from Kennedy Drive with a gravel wetland in front. On July 7th, the applicant testified that they believe the tree area would provide adequate transition. Staff notes the board did not respond to that testimony at the time. It recommends the board consider the proposal prior to closing the hearing. We're talking about, Marla, is that comment specifically referring to whether we said that the tree area would provide adequate transition? Some ambiguity there? Is that what you're referencing?
Right. And I'm not sure that this is the absolute best plan, but the idea is off to the left of the page. It's sort of those condo developments, 2 stories, some of them multifamily, some of them detached condos, and then there's some trees in through here, and then we get into a 4-story building with a 5th-story garage that actually sits higher than the road. So the purpose is, you know, are we doing an appropriate amount of transition through here, or is anything more needed? And maybe a rendering would be the better way to do it. I'm not really sure what the best thing to show right now would be.
I think we have provided a rendering of that streetscape. You know, it's granted the entire lot 14 is not shown, but it does show the entrance to Two Brothers Drive with lot 15 and lot 14 shown. So I don't know if you have that available in the packet, Marla.
So my files are organized by when you submitted them, or for what hearing you submitted them. Do you know when that?
It's a good question. Andrew, do
You
you?
get a
by
1 in
any
5
chance-
chance.
Yeah, hang on one second.
Do we by any chance have the ability to share our screens or no?
If you have it up on your screen, I can temporarily kick the presentation over to you.
It would take me a little while to load the that PowerPoint that we had presented off of the network.
So I have those PowerPoints. Which one is it? The 21st or the 7th?
I'm trying to figure that out. Do you know what hearing you provided the comment for?
It must have been, I think we talked about lots 14 and 15 on the 7th. So let me flip through that one really
Yeah,
quickly.
try
Try
that.
this. Hang on.
I just got
Try
it
this
open. So
one. No, that's building 15, isn't it?
yeah, that's a good. There you go.
Which
That's the one you were just on was specifically a response to this comment. That one.
Okay.
So that's basically showing sort of what's up Kennedy Drive from this specific structure, and you can see there's those trees are existing and they're remaining in place. There's a wetland in there. That stormwater pond has some walking trails and stuff around it. The sort of lighter white triangle in the middle is the Windridge Condo Association. So that's a 2-story, sort of older 1970s condominium building. And then actually just up the page a little bit, what you can't see in the photo is the Lancaster condos, which are 3-story buildings, I think, over parking as well. We had actually, this particular building on lot 14 is only 3 stories. It's the shortest building in the project. So it's 3 stories over a podium parking. And so that was sort of intentional as well to kind of transition into the site from the smaller buildings along Kennedy in that area. And we felt like the tree buffer was sort of a good transition. And, backing up 5 years, the whole hillside neighborhood was actually in a way planned as the transition to get to this higher density housing. The entire site was zoned as R12, but we had back then, we discussed that we didn't really think that it was appropriate to be putting taller apartment buildings sort of over near Stonington Circle or over near some of the smaller, more residential style development. And so we had shifted that density north into this area, sort of always envisioning it as being transitional, sort of the project transitioning into itself.
Yeah,
So the
I think
purpose
it's
of this
also
staff comment is really to get the board's feedback on your presentation. I appreciate reiterating it because it's gone from some of our minds, including my own. But this is the decision representing what the board's reaction is.
Yeah, so I'll just kick it off and then invite others, board members to comment. I like that transition. And I just want to make sure that, have we determined, Evan and Andrew, in the preliminary plat, the filings, what trees are going to be kept and what are not? Or is that something you're going to do with final plat?
The trees that are within that are in this rendering, like I guess I don't know what direction is on the top of the page, like to the top of the building, kind of where the red arrows pointed, are all protected currently. So they're within a protected area that's not getting developed. It's not getting touched by this project.
So that's clearly delineated in the packet. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's inside a wetland buffer, so it's all.
I'm really happy. This is Dawn. I'm really happy to hear that because, as you guys know, a lot of trees came down and a lot of people were unhappy about that. So maintaining as many trees as possible, I think, is very important.
Anyone else on the board? Okay, Moving on to roadway geometry, cross-section, and sidewalk. On 9/15, the applicant agreed to engage a streetscape design professional to develop a roadway cross-section that balances the following goals. A, an appropriately urban setting, including an activated street. B, non-vehicular connectivity throughout the project area, including for people who live between Two Brothers Drive and Eldridge Street, people who live on the far side of Kennedy Drive, and those who may live in the future phase of the O'Brien development. C, slow speeds. D, roadway maintenance. Staff recommends the board confirm that the above reflects their expectations and confirm that they would accept a configuration that involves a different combination of on-road lanes, separated paths, sidewalks than is currently proposed, as long as the above objectives are met. Speaking for myself, and I invite other board members to comment. Yeah, that is my expectation. I don't know if you need a design professional, but I do know that when we come back for final plat, we'll want to know what that configuration looks like. We want to make sure that our friends at Parks and Rec Committee or, Bike and Ped Committee are, had a chance to review and provide comments to make sure that that works. And those four goals seem to, whether you get a professional design it, or whether Kathy Frank designs it, or whether you design it, as long as it meets those goals, I'm comfortable with it. But Don, Jim, Alyssa, Mark, what do you think? John?
Yeah, Matt, I think you pretty much summed it up. I think we've stated the goals we're looking for, and whether it's, a third party or in-house, I think we need to see more detail, and that's our expectations.
And I think we all agree that that it can be accomplished within the easement area that's been identified. So we're looking for the best solution.
That's great. We've been working on finding somebody to help with that. So I think we're getting pretty close.
Okay, great. Lot 17, staff comment number 5. Staff recommends the board discuss whether they would prefer to see a temporary access drive on lot 17 to exclude sidewalks and curbing in order to facilitate redevelopment of lot 17 in the future, or the board would refer the applicant to omit parking on the access drive altogether. So we had some discussions about lot 17 the last time around. Lot 17 is not part of, we're still at a point, Evan and Andrew, where lot 17, you're viewing that as a conditional use permit, not part of this application, to be done separately. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had submitted something with regard to this morning as well. I don't know if that sketch is handy, but our sort of recollection the last time we talked was that folks were more comfortable with the spaces on the sort of access aisle in a temporary configuration than they were comfortable with the spaces that are sort of still on lot 17, but in the lot that is sort of a permanent lot associated with the lot 13 building. We had talked about a wall of some sort that might be a structure that would be enough to sort of shield that. Yeah, so this is an alternate plan that we submitted this morning, which sort of shows a reconfiguration of the parking lot where we were able to keep the parking spaces that we had previously. We moved the door to the sort of driveway access to the trash building, and that gained a few parking spaces. And we had also penciled in a sort of wall that would be a privacy wall that you can see sort of up against the main part of the road. It's like a little bit of an L shape, kind of a dark line. You can see a staircase and stuff in it. So the wall, is an idea. It could be, that wall, if it's considered, to provide that sort of screening, is in front of even the parking spaces in the access aisle, which was our thought process there. I think we're open to the aisle being temporary or non-permanent, the sort of entryway where it says 20 parking spaces. I guess our thought was to get feedback on this reconfiguration. And so the idea then would be to propose, this screening wall, and the parking, access aisle coming in where it says 20 parking spaces, and then this reconfiguration of the parking lot that moves the spaces behind the plane of the building, in that lower lot.
I also think it's worth pointing out that there is a pretty decent grade change there too. So you not only have this kind of screening wall, which would also be landscape, but there's a grade change. So the passerby, either pedestrian passerby or vehicular, is not looking at the parking because it's below them.
Just process-wise, what you're asking for is the wall would be part of this, or part of your final plat for this project, but yet 17 would be a conditional use permit. Or do they run concurrently, or would you apply for them concurrently at the next stage of review?
I think we would apply for them concurrently at the next stage of review.
I think that makes sense.
Question. So, but we still don't have sort of proposed development on revised lot 17?
We've not sort of drawn anything in. We could guess at that. I felt like last time we landed on lot 17's access being done in a temporary fashion, so that was how we sort of handled that unknown.
I guess my only question or concern, and maybe if I'm recalling the conversation and my feedback at the last meeting, I might be contradicting myself, but now that I see the corrected, what is it, 68 parking spaces? I can't quite read that, with the little circular cul-de-sac at the end of the parking lot, and then the access driveway parking to the right of it. Those parking spaces on that access drive that's proud or front of the, to the front of the building really stick out. And they're going to stick out even more because, as you can see with the grade, that lower parking lot is lower, but that access drive is sitting up higher. So the front of those cars are going to be sort of like kind of butting out over that embankment going down. And I just think that, do you need all of those parking spaces to make this project work? Because I think if you draw a line parallel with the road to the edge of the building, you would only have to lose like 3, possibly 4 spaces to make that parking lot actually compliant with front of the building, no parking in the front of the building.
Yeah, I mean,
I see that.
That wouldn't have been how I thought the line got drawn. So
Marla,
we're thinking about it, we were drawing the line that would eliminate 10 or 15 spaces.
Marla, can you confirm that on like an angled road that bends away from the front of the building?
Yeah, that's how we interpret it.
Yeah, so if you just, yep. So to me, if you did that, I'd be more comfortable with the conditional approval of that access, because then it would be in compliance and you don't want to have to worry about, well, you would have to worry about, what would happen, Marla, on lot 17 if the building was behind that area? Would those parking spaces have to become in compliant?
Right, so these parking spaces on lot 17 aren't allowed,
Right.
period, as part of this PUD.
Okay.
So it's really, we're in this weird area where this blue line doesn't have a ton of meaning for this project. It's not actually on that lot.
Right.
But, say you put a building, let's see how quickly I can draw a polygon. Here, the front of your lot would be, the front of your, it's doing it again. The
Right.
front of your parking could be no farther than that.
Right. So it seems as though if you could lose those 3 or 4 spaces on the entrance in, it's going to feel more like an entrance drive into a parking lot. rather than like parking starting almost right off the road. You'd be able to get a little more landscaping and it would be in compliance.
Yeah,
So can you
listen,
draw
I
the-
think that's a reasonable request. I mean, we will hopefully be able to find 3 more parking spaces. You know, every parking space is needed, but you know, we can work around that comment.
Okay.
Yeah, can you draw the blue line again? I mean, just so would a parking space just behind the blue line then would be compliant? So like maybe a couple of the ones we eliminated where that new U is.
So that's what I was saying. It's
Yeah.
really dependent on the building that's on the lot. So if this orange thing is your building, it's parallel to the road and touching the front of the building. So if this line is parallel to the road-ish, and then I move it to touch the building, that's your line.
So you could gain
relative
back
to
some
the building
parking
on
space.
relative to the building on lot 13, then we might be able to fit 1 or 2 more spaces where that U is, where it says where your mouse is right now.
Yeah.
Right,
could
so what
balance
you
it
have
with
to
what
do
you're
is with your conditional use application, and I think somebody earlier in a deliberative session called this a sketch plan for your conditional use. You'd have to demonstrate in your conditional use that this sort of orange building was a reasonable expectation for that parking to be allowed.
Relative to the face of the building that we don't have figured out yet.
But that it was something that was within the realm of possibility. I mean, that's why it's a conditional use.
Mhm.
Okay.
No.
I think that that's a reasonable goal. I think that we were drawing the line basically parallel to the face of the building on lot 13, which was eliminating a substantial amount more parking.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't see why we can't figure that out. 3 spaces is not a lot.
Right. Okay, number 6. The applicant has testified that compact parking spaces are proposed to be 18 by 8. Standard parking are 18 by 9 with 24-foot drive aisle. Staff supports a waiver of 1 foot in width if the drive aisles are standard width. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to confirm that the drive aisles widths will be standard 24 feet at this stage of review. Staff recommends the board determine whether to accept the requested parking dimensional waiver at this time. So are the drive aisle widths standard 24 feet?
Yes, exactly 24 feet.
Yeah.
They're
And
exactly 24 feet.
Staff's fine with the waiver of the 1 of 18.8 rather than 18.9. I don't drive a truck, so I'm fine with it. But does the board want to sound off on the 1 foot waiver?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with it too.
Yeah.
That's all we have for staff comments. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment regarding this preliminary plat application? If
Matt,
so,
can I go
enter your
first?
name. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is something that came up as I was working on the decision. The applicant had presented this plan. I'm going to flip back to the overall plan. This plan shows kind of this area at the very north end. And in their original application, they had said that they were proposing to retain the trees in this area. You know, obviously some of them are impacted by grading, some of them are impacted by the parking lot, some of them are impacted by the sidewalk, some of them are impacted by the building. What is the plan? Are you proposing to retain as many trees as appear to not be impacted on this? I just want to make sure I get the decision right.
Yeah, so we had originally, I think we talked about this at one of the hearings. If not, then, you know, I thought about talking about it, but
No, you did, but my memory's super fuzzy on it.
What happened was that in looking at the next master plan for the remaining lands, we sort of figured out that this area where is the most logical place for stormwater treatment for the future development. So like that building we were just talking about on lot 17. And so rather than sort of say that we were going to keep these trees at this point and then have basically a simultaneous application, I mean, it's submitted at this point for review, be proposing to remove them and plant a stormwater and build a stormwater pond. So we felt like that was a little bit, know, it just was complicating this and saying we were going to do something that we already knew that we weren't going to be able to do. So the intent at this point is to not represent that we're going to be keeping them. I presume that we'll keep them if, you know, we're not constructing it, or maybe they'll need to get removed in order to sort of facilitate the construction of lot 15. I think we sort of have to figure that out still. I would hate to have to be like right in front of a brand new building picking up trees. So, you know, we might look at sort of roughing in that grading to sort of generally be where we think the stormwater pond for the future phase is going to be as part of this project. And that way we would sort of have that structure in place, you know, so that we weren't digging up right in front of what we just built, if that makes sense. And what I would say is, you know, we're certainly going to address that with our landscaping plan. The investment for the landscaping for this project is fairly extensive. I think the tune of $600,000 or $700,000 of landscaping. And so I think we'll be able to get some new trees in there around that stormwater pond to address that removal.
Thanks.
Great. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment regarding this preliminary plat application? Please say your name or enter your name in the chat box. All right, hearing none and seeing none, is there any other questions that the applicant has for staff or the board has for the applicant? Hearing none, then I would move that we close continued preliminary plat application SD 2016 of O'Brien Farm Road LLC.
I will second that.
Seconded by Don. Roll call. Alyssa.
Aye.
Don.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And Matt votes aye. Brian Sullivan is absent, and this preliminary plat is closed by a vote of 601. Thank you very much, gentlemen, but don't go anywhere.
You guys.
Because agenda item number 8 is continued master plan application MP 2001 of O'Brien Farm Road LLC to amend a previously approved master plan for a land unit development, develop 39.16 acres with a maximum of 458 dwelling units and 45,000 square feet of office space. The amendment is to add 0.6 acres to zone 2A without changing the approvals or use for that zone, and remove the 0.6 acres from zone 7 to 255 Kennedy Drive. The applicant has been, this application has been continued because of its ties to SD 2016. No materials are included in this packet for this item. Is this something Marla, that we close tonight, or we continue until the final plat for the project proceeded? No, which one?
I would recommend closing it tonight, and I'll make sure that any updates to that draft decision reflect, I'll make sure that draft decision reflects any changes made in the preliminary plat prior to your deliberation.
Is the Evan and Andrew, does that sound right?
Yeah, I think.
Any objections to that?
I think what that application is doing is expanding the area of the master plan to accommodate these buildings. So as long as the decision is structured so that we can amend the plan or something, if there's something that changed since we filed it to accommodate that, or if Marla is going to review it, that seems fine. I don't think anything needs to change in it. I think everything's still where it was.
I think so too, but I want to double check because it's been drafted for a while. I can show that plan. Let's see this one. I think this is the.
At the end of the day, we can always file another one too, so.
Updated plan sheet PL1, that's it. So this one shows what that application is for. So that application is to add this area here to the project.
Yeah, you don't have the other plan that shows it overlaid on the apartment project in that, yeah. It's,
Oh, probably, but it'll take
I'm
me a while.
pretty sure it hasn't changed. So that would be the only concern. But if you can just take a look at that, and if you need something, we can change it, or as a condition change it, or whatever. That would be great.
Okay, yeah, there's the option to do a reconsideration too, if for whatever reason we don't have all the information we need, but I think we do.
Yeah, we can reopen it. So with that, I would move that we close contingent master plan application MP 2001 of O'Brien Farm Road LLC. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Don. Roll call. Alyssa?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Brian is absent, and Matt votes aye, and this matter is closed by a vote of 6-0-1. Okay, thank you, Evan. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Now moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the minutes of September 15th and October 6th. I've read the minutes. I did not see any edits or changes, additions. Anyone else? Any comments? If there's none, then I would move that we approve the minutes from September 15th and October 6th.
Second.
I'll second.
Seconded by John, and we can do minutes by voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes from September 15th and October 5th, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay, great. So that concludes the South Burlington Development Review Board meeting for October 20th. See you in November. Bye.
Good meeting.
Meetings on Wednesday. Next meeting's on Wednesday.
Yes, the meeting is not on election night. Meeting is the day after election on November 4th.
Hopefully we'll all be happy people. All I can
For various reasons.
One of us will be a very exhausted people.
Yeah, that's very true. Good luck, Sue.
Well, no.
Aye.
This conference is no